Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from or if you are catching us on replay. This is The Awesome Journey, and I am your host, 𝒃𝒆𝒏𝒆𝒚, along with my co hosting here, Christy Howard. And as a friendly reminder, because I haven't said this little intro in quite a while, we're just two girls that connected on LinkedIn 15 years ago, live on opposite sides of the country, have giving hearts, a passion for paying it forward, and I may have prayed to be living louder in my purpose. And now here we sit in front of microphones, bringing you the awesome journey. And for those of you that are new here, and for those of you, as a reminder, we generally have a guest that is an inspiring person to share their story of challenge and inspiration as a reminder that we're all united in our personal journeys. And, hey, here's what's happening today. For those of you that may have missed our messages this morning, we were to have Justin Brey with us today and his mustache. But unfortunately, he had some other things come up and he could not be with us today. And to be honest, at first I was sort of like, oh, just because I wanted to hear all the great things that are going on in Justin's life. And then the second thing was like, oh, this gives Christy and I an opportunity to do a little bit of an update together because we have not done one since last year. And we actually couldn't think of it like December, maybe November. But in any event, we thought great time to reset, maybe talk about what's coming up and do a little bit of reflection, get some audience questions maybe. Um, and then also just kind of to go back to the basics of because we're coming up on our 1 year anniversary, which seems nuts, truthfully. Because when we started this whole thing, again, as a reminder, and for those of you that may not really know why we started all of this, I was feeling in a funk, truthfully. Like I was feeling completely disconnected, depressed, um, struggling with work, relationships, feeling not living in my purpose, like all the things, struggling to find full-time work. And then that can plague on your ego in a very big way, and your emotions. So I was definitely living in that space and had this great domain called The Awesome Journey that had come up for renewal. And I thought, do I keep this or what do I do with it? Because I always thought, I want a podcast because The Awesome Journey is just such a rad domain and it applies to all of us because life, regardless of the good, bad, and the downright ugly, is an awesome journey. Um, because some of those deepest, darkest places do indeed take us to the most amazing spaces. We just don't really like it when we're in those deep, dark spaces. Uh, and in any event, I was praying about it, and Christy's name kept coming up as someone that should be co-hosting with me. And the funny part of that at the time was Christy and I have known each other for 15 years, but at that time had only seen each other in person 5 times. And so I texted her, "Hey girl, it's me and I've got this idea about a podcast." She was like, "Sounds great. Let's jump on a call." And here we are. And we both started doing live streams at the beginning of last year. Um, and we decided the podcast was way too much trouble. And we're like, hey, we could do a live stream a lot quicker. We threw a date on the calendar, or put together a couple of lists of people that we thought we would reach out to and who we wanted to highlight. And we launched on April 18th last year, which is incredible. And it was a weekend after my nephew got married. I got home late the Monday night before and started the next Tuesday or that next morning. And it's just kind of cool for us to look back and see where this has gone and how it has grown, and taken on its own journey and how we write it. And then today is a perfect example of that because it's a representation of life, our own awesome journey. Things change, and you got to figure: Am I going to roll with it? Am I going to let it rule my day and then totally derail me? Or am I going to lean into it and be like, hey, this must mean because we're supposed to do something different that God has in mind for us? So that was a lot for me to say. Um, and so that all being said, Christy, I'll toss it over to you.
I didn't even I just let you roll. I didn't even interrupt.
I know. So good.
Well, probably because I've been working every day since Friday at 3 o'clock in the morning till 7.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's another story. Yeah, this has been very cool for the fact that we, you know, our thought process, because of the job market, and
Yeah.
since it's this job market, job seekers, we were going to have a lot of recruiters and job seekers, but the mental health, mental health goes in with the job seekers.
Mm-hmm.
And mental health has always been very important to Kelly and I, for the fact that we both have dealt with depression, and we know that darkness. And we've had to crawl out of it by ourselves many times. So to turn around and show people that we're here to help them, but also for people to feel safe to be able to share their own journey. I always call it the rabbit hole. We tend to dive down that rabbit hole, and it's pretty dark sometimes. And, a lot of our guests, so because of my group of people that I know, I know a lot of the undercover agents and, first responders. So we started reaching out to them, and without really knowing the deepness of their stories. I knew their stories, I knew them, but for them to share what they have shared in our past in each segment has been pretty, it's been very inspiring for me, to know that we're not alone. Nobody's alone. And many of us can resonate to somebody else's journey. And knowing that, I grew up in the generation that you got over things. And because I got over things, I never got over things, because I just never got over things, because I never went through them. And so when we go through when we go through it, and, get through the battles and through the darkness, we do see the light. The light always shines. And what's interesting is everybody has shared their faith.
Yeah.
They've always felt that, they've not always felt, but they knew that they've had to go through what they had to go through to get where they are now,
Mm-hmm.
to either share their story so other people can have knowledge, or, just become a better person, have their relationships better. With my confidence coaching, that when I work with people, everybody knows my faith is very strong. I call myself a junior Christian. Because it came into my life at 20. I had been raped the second time, and I did what I always did. I went and partied. So it was just, that's how my life was. And it was the first time that I heard a voice. And I knew that it was God, though I didn't have that relationship. And then the following year, I started going to church, and I remember somebody giving me a Bible. And then the following year, I met my now husband. This peacefulness of him, that I wanted to have that relationship, and it was the relationship that he has with God. However, that's taken a long time. I'm getting there. It's a work every day. And with that, I look at all the dark days that I've gone through. And from the first time that I heard God's voice, the other two times was the two times that I did the Brian Terry events. And this is, Kelly and I really got to know each other at the Scottsdale one. I woke up one morning and said, I heard you're supposed to do an event. I didn't know Brian Terry. I didn't know anything about it. I knew the whistleblowers, and I did it, but it was hell. Both of them were hell. I got knocked down. I got kicked by people, but I was successful. And then the last time was, I walked away from the corporate sector, because God said, you're supposed to be doing what you're doing now. And I pay it forward. I'm here to help everybody to make sure that their mental health, they're not spinning. And having the people that we have on, I mean, these are these are successful, strong, and we have pivoted more to men's mental health because it's such a stigma. And our passion is the first responders and the vets and the undercover and anybody who gets kicked to the curb. I mean, they all get kicked to the curb doing what's right, and we've learned from them.
So
yeah,
true. Yeah, I mean, all of that, and I will say even secondarily today, after I made the post this morning, and I was like, ah, man, bummer, but oh man, I'm excited because Christy and I haven't done a catch up in a while. But it was how everybody responded, the direct messages that we got, the comments that we got, and it was like, see everything. There is a silver lining or a blessing in everything. It is about how we look at it. And it was just kind of that friendly reminder of what Christy was just all talking about. All of our paths go that way, where you may not have experienced the same exact thing as any of our guests or even what Christy just shared, but you can relate to it in the sense of, I've been in a dark place or in a place where I felt alone and I felt dark. I mean, I felt all those things. I couldn't face the world. It felt too scary. And the longer I felt isolated, the worse I felt. Like, that's me. I beat myself up when I start feeling depressed. And so I make it worse. And then I tend to isolate. And we thought when we started this show that was one of the things. Hey, somebody's going to hear this that's on the periphery, that doesn't participate, will never say a word, but they're going to hear it. And somebody's story is going to change the course of someone else's life. And to bring Justin and his mustache into the conversation at this moment, his life changed because of a text message. And I just use that. I know it's his story, but it's out there. So it's not like I'm sharing something that he hasn't shared. But it's a reminder to everyone of like, hey, you aren't alone. People have been in super dark places in a text message, a DM or anything. And we talk about that a lot on the show as well, is, hey, reach out to somebody you haven't heard from in a while or you haven't seen in a while. Just to let them know that you're thinking about them. Doesn't have to be anything special, but that is special because that small little thing can make all the difference. And it is sort of silly silly in a funny way to think back when Christy and I were putting all this together, because we're like, well, who are we going to target? Because of course the marketer in me was thinking all of these things. We don't have a logo, we don't have these things, and it was like, so what? We don't have any of them. We want to help everyone. We've got a microphone. We can help job seekers. We can highlight recruiters. We can have people share their stories to help encourage, inspire, motivate others. And Christy's right. Moving into the lane of, men's mental health. And obviously that's not the only thing that we do. But it's been interesting because when people do have a safe space to speak, and I will say that's something Christy and I look at and we're like, man, we are so blessed. We have introductory calls with people where we cry. And I will note that I just said we, because
and I am doing it more often.
She is. But it's because we offer a space of safety for people to speak. And when people feel held, unjudged, loved, they're more apt to share because they feel safe. And that's what we all need. And so again, our whole core was, wouldn't the world just be a greater place, even if we just did this an hour a week and supplied a little bit of, again, inspiration, motivation, and hope into the world, and it will have some small trickle effect in some way. Because I do believe that through storytelling, as Neil Ford said last week, that it does change our course and it inspires us and it makes us feel better. And when and not to get into all love vibrations and all those things, but when we feel in a more confident, and then to bring in confidence coaching, when we feel confident, supported, and loved, we are more apt to do things and we're more excited to do things because we're not worried about failing. We're not thinking about that in the forefront. We're just like, man, I am kicking some serious ass here and I'm going to keep going, because we feel all of that around us. But likewise, when we're in that space of darkness, and even when we can't see the light, I've been there. There was no light. There was no, I don't even know that there was a tunnel. But knowing that those people are there, and for me, even not being able to focus on the people and just knowing that God was there for me was enough. And to be like, God, things are so bad, I don't even know what to do. So I'm giving it to you, and I trust you to move me through this, because this is terrifying. Um, as a reminder to all of us, because we've all been there. We're humans, and it's normal. I really wish we could change the whole stigma, not just around men's mental health, but about making it, when we talk about physical health or dietary health, or, someone, as an example, who has diabetes and is on insulin, we're like, or has cancer and is in chemo, we're like, oh my gosh, what can we do to help you? Like those are issues that we're supportive of and we're caring of. But when people talk about mental health, why isn't it the same thing? Like it's part of our health. Part of our health. So why is it judging? And I think that the number, and granted, Christy loves when I throw out a statistic. I think it's 1 in 5 Americans have reported mental health issues, and that's reported. And I would gander that it's way higher than that. That's just my opinion. But we're humans, so we all go through something. Doesn't mean that you have to be diagnosed with something, but we have situational depression. We go through loss and grief when we lose a job, when we've been out of work for a long time, a loss of a relationship, the ending of a marriage. So many things. Those are situational mental health issues. And it should all just be the normal thing. Like, hey, I'm not feeling it right now. I'm feeling like crap, and maybe I don't even know why. And
I think the problem is that people are afraid.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they're afraid to, and from just, they're afraid to. I think a lot of people are afraid to be there because they don't know what to do, and they feel that they have to do something. And I remember that a dark time when I was living in Dallas. God help me. But that was God needed me to go through this. He needed me to go through Dallas, and
Oh yeah.
he, I was always there and gave everybody my teacup, and I didn't even have enough on my saucer, so I got burnt. I got, into those dark places. And when I actually reached out to people, there was no one around. All those people that I had called friends, acquaintances, anyone. But I also understood that because I was always the strong person taking care, I'm okay. Don't worry about me. I'm okay, because that was always my life. But I also have seen through each time, and I've seen that dark place more than I ever want to see. I'm a better person.
Amen.
It's like any experience that you go through, you grow through it. And I'm now where people hear me talk about Fred in my head. We have that wonderful critic in our head that's going to sit there. Not only society judges us, we
Tell
judge
everybody credit. I know you just sort of touched on it, but
okay. So Fred in my head. So we all have that critic in our head. And so Kelly and I were talking one day, and I said, well, we need to somehow understand who that critic is, just to shut it down. So all of a sudden, Mr. Rogers came into my head. The thought process. Mr. Rogers, those of you who don't know who Mr. Rogers is, go Google him. But Mr. Rogers, welcome to my neighborhood. Come and watch the train go around. You're all welcome. See, Mr. Rogers, Fred, because I would just call him Fred, he wanted me to come into his neighborhood so he could tell me that I'm not worthy, that nobody loves me, blah, 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 blah. So it's Fred in my head. So now I have that distinction that when I have that trigger, because we're all still human, and that if I feel judgment, or something's said and I have a trigger from my childhood or whatever, I'm aware of it. And I tell Fred to go play with his trains without me, because I don't need to go there. I know who I am. I know my heart, and I know you know, where I'm going, and learning those triggers and keep on growing. I mean, that's a journey that's never going to stop until, you know, I'm hanging out with God. Um, but it's just the shows, the type of people that we keep on bringing in, and we're booked out, I believe, until the end of May. You know, we have some repeats because they've got such different stories,
And
and
so many layers, because we're not just one story, right?
yeah, yeah. And so, but what's great about it is both of us have lived the life of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And we never want somebody else to feel judged. Their story is their story. It's not my story to share, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
here to listen and just be. And
Mm-hmm.
so many people feel that they need to do because that's where we are in society. We need to fix, do, or whatever. Just be quiet and just be. I have I have lots of different business coaches and stuff like that that I, you know, listen to, and one said that the first, when you wake up in the morning, you do 15 minutes of meditation, you do 15 minutes of reading the Bible or something, you know, motivational, and then you go to your phone and you send a text to somebody in your tribe. Second one is somebody that you're close to but you don't talk to all the time, and then you scroll and it's sort of, you know, just grab a phone number and text them. And yes, of course, you're probably going to get like, who are you? And then you start a conversation. I will say I do the first two. I do the meditation. The scrolling of people that I don't talk to, I delete. I delete people's phones. And I realized that I shouldn't, because they were in my life for a reason, a season, or, you know, and those reasons and seasons, people come back in your life because they change and you change.
Mm-hmm.
We all evolve if we're open to evolving.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, one of the things that I have said a lot on this show and others. Hi, Dawn. Hi, Dan. Hi, Greg. Thank you all. And you all sent like such nice messages. We so appreciate you. Because again, it's community. Um, but we've said a lot on this show, and again, it's said on even other shows that we've been on, is if growth were easy, everybody would be doing it. Growth is hard and it's work. It doesn't just happen. You actually do have to participate and feel stuff. And some things don't feel great.
Yeah.
And what Christy and I compare this to, and I use this analogy a lot because I love it. And it was one. It came up when I was on a live, and I have no idea where it came from, other than the fact of I was like, God, just help me say what I'm supposed to say today. Is that looking at life like skydiving? Christy and I are two of those, and I'm going to say rad people that have jumped out of a perfectly good plane. Um, I loved every single second of it, except for when the door opened and my brain was telling my body when I was looking down, like, girl, what on earth are you doing? And my feet automatically went to the wing to stop me. But the whole point is fear of going out that 13,000 feet is when you roll out and you're in the free fall, falling at 110 miles an hour. It is so loud and crazy, chaotic. I will say every single picture of me doing that I was ear to ear grin. And when the parachute is pulled and it settles, there is this peace that is inexplicable unless you've done it. And everyone who's done it absolutely knows that silence is like a silence you've never heard before, and this overwhelming sense of peace and beauty. And that's what diving into fear is like. It's scary, it's loud, it's chaotic. Um, you know, we don't always smile through it though, but when you're rolling into it, you get through it quicker and you get to that peaceful space on the other side. And I mean, I've never said this, and I don't know anyone that said it like, man, I wish I would have waited longer to get to this side of peace. Um, and it is getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And just because we speak about it all the time doesn't mean we're perfect at it. We still, and I'll speak for myself, I still stumble, but I'm very well aware of like, man, what is holding me back right now?
So
And
it's
then
triggers.
why am I afraid? Or that trigger that comes out of left field, and you're like, man, where did that come from? Like, I didn't see that one coming. But embracing it and being okay with it and picking up the phone and calling somebody and being like, sister, I don't know what the heck is going on with me right now, but I'm hyperventilating. I'm having a panic attack. Here's what happened. And just walking through that and then allowing yourself grace. And I will say that's my biggest thing is giving my own self grace because I still beat my, Fred who's in my head. When he starts getting too loud, it's loud and it's hard to shut him up sometimes. And but you got to give yourself grace of like, but it's okay that I stumbled right now. It's okay that I hesitate. It's okay that I feel afraid right now. Um, just don't live there. And
What's interesting with the two of us, we're great at giving other people's,
always.
I don't want to say advice. I try not to give advice or my opinion. I just give them information from my own experience. And then, we have to practice what we say.
Yep.
And that's, it's sort of, I had some pretty deep conversations today's Monday. So yeah, this
Tuesday.
last week. Yeah, today's Tuesday, sorry. This last week, they were deep to the point that the tears were coming, but they were all good tears. They were all like, they were cleansing because somebody got me. Somebody hit me with a core that didn't even really know me, but they saw me. And so when I was talking to this person, we started talking about the whole thing about fear. I don't do small talk. I think if anybody knows me, I like, let's go dive deep because we're going to learn from each other. And the deeper you get, you start learning. This small talk, it bores me. But so they asked me where I used to be very fearful, because I said that I'm fearless. And I said, I used to be afraid of heights. When I lived in Chicago, I would have a hard time going into John Hancock. If anybody knows John Hancock, there are windows around the whole place, and you stand by the windows and you look down. I couldn't do that. And then I went to a spa, and they had a 35-foot telephone pole that you had to climb up, and you had to pull yourself up on a disc about the size of a Frisbee. Now you're belayed, but I've always had a trust issue. And I had two people that I didn't really trust. That's another story. Going to belay me down. And I realized I was holding on to the fear of remembering things.
Mm.
I was on the fear of not being a good person. So during my second rape, well, both rapes, I don't remember. I mean, we do this when people get attacked or whatever. It's a defense. It's a mechanism that you shut yourself down. So I didn't really remember much. So I climb up there, and usually people climb up and jump. No big deal. No big deal. I stood there for about 25 minutes crying because the whole scenario came back, everything. I remembered, the memory was just there. And then I jumped, and it was like a closure for me, because I've been holding back of all this fear, of all this crap I've been carrying. And this is in my 40s, when I was, getting into a good place. And I realized that, something, I have nothing to fear, because how do I know how am I fearful of something I don't know? So I did different things. I did 45-foot pole. It was at a spa. And that's when I jumped out of a plane. I loved it, except I will say mine was over the ocean. And because we were going so fast, which was great because you had other people, he had to slow down. So he went around and round and round. I'm like, dude, you're making me so freaking dizzy. I'm about to throw up. But it wasn't that I'm scared or anything. It was just like I was dizzy. And when I came down from jumping out of the plane, it was so peaceful.
Yeah.
Yet then I found out I jumped with an ear infection. And the doctor's like, you just jumped out of a plane with that ear infection. It could have really destroyed you. And I'm like, but it
Yeah.
wasn't supposed to. I was supposed to do this. So it goes back to being in fear of our journey.
Mm-hmm.
We can't be in fear because we don't know what our journey, what's going to be next. You know, we
Well,
don't
we
have
don't
control.
know what's next, right? Like that's part of the thing is having things so planned out. You know, for anyone who does know my story, and for those that don't know, and it's part of my story. It's
Share
not my
a little bit.
story.
Some people might. I just shared mine.
Is you know, I was in a domestic violence relationship, and leaving that situation, I wanted to control everything because my life was so out of control that if I could control it, then nothing, it couldn't hurt me because everything had to be in control because then it's everything's good, which is not true. Control does absolutely zero, um, and it just weighs you down. And I do think the example of, you know, landing after skydiving, because for me, same. I was like the most joyous child. Like it was ridiculous. And I wanted to go back up again. Like it was like getting off that roller coaster and being like, can we just go again? I don't want to I just want to do it again. It's amazing. Um, because when I find myself doing things of control, of being very tedious about detail stuff. Like if this would have happened to me 15 years ago today, what happened with guest canceled, what I would have been like losing my mind
I would have
because
been the
things
same way.
out of control, not going as planned, freaked me out because then it was like, that just means that bad shit's going to happen because my life experience at that time, or what I had had in my belief system, was that it was bad when you didn't have control. Because when someone else had control, seemingly, because when you give your power away, that you do give them control, it's no bueno. It sucks. And so the more I try to control, I immediately know like something's up. Like if I'm going to my pantry to realign my cans so that they're all facing perfectly forward and realigned, and being like, I need to line these, I know something that's up that I'm trying to avoid.
Yep.
'Cause that's what I do. Or I need to go clean something to a level that's ridiculous. It's because I'm trying to avoid something, not something necessarily that's task oriented. It's usually something that I got going on up here that I'm afraid of, or I haven't figured out how to deal with, or how to even approach it. Because the other thing too is when we don't know how to deal with something, it's okay to not know and to be like, I have no clue what I'm feeling. I just know I'm not feeling right, um, and that's okay too. And that'll take me back to the whole thing of grace. Um, but allowing ourselves those, you know, baby steps of life, um, things don't have to feel great all the time. And this is another thing we say a lot is, you know, I've been to counseling, therapy, all the things many times over my life. Um, and it's not just because I'm finished that I'm like, I'm done, I'm good. Like now I can face life and not have to worry about anything. That's not true. It's an ongoing process. And that's how, I mean, think about that. I feel like mental health, a great analogy, and this just came to me, is the gym.
Yeah.
You can't go get in shape and be like, man, I'm killing it right now. Like I got my body fat where I want it to be. I'm rocking it. Just because you're there, you can't not ever go back to the gym for 10 years and expect to still have that rockin' bod. You've got to put the work in. And that's the same thing with our mental health. We've got to put the work in. But what does that look like? And I do think it looks different for everyone. And that's what Christy was alluding to. You know, we're great at getting advice, but I'll say it's more so not about giving advice. It's more that we're great about listening, um, to other people, because sometimes that's all we really want, right? It's just to be heard, really heard, not just someone sitting there going, yeah, 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 yeah. Really hearing, because when you connect with someone when they're sharing, I mean, it's next level. And I will say, I mean, I've always been referred to, I'm the crier, but Christy's turning into what I'm just saying. Um, because it's so
They're
difficult.
sugar tears. They're not sad tears. They're sugar tears.
Yes, exactly. Because it's hard to be around others when they're feeling something like that and it not touch you. It just
Mhm.
is. And that it's beautiful. And I've been involved in something else, dealing with mental health. And people were sharing their stories with other people that were in the room on a live. And what happened during that is everybody, same with what Christy and I do, no judgment. We're just allowing you a safe place to share your story. Every checkbox that society tries to put on us leaves the building because all that's left are who are our spirits, our souls and our hearts connected to one another. And when you do that, the place it takes you is so beautiful. And it's just a reminder of life doesn't have to be as complicated as the world makes it. Like, let's just be honest. Because when you strip down and do get to having a conversation, a real conversation with people and really listening, those are the things you remember. Who gives two? I mean, I don't care what someone just posted on Instagram. I really don't. I mean, I'm not, social media has its place. I think it does great things, but I also think it has some harm, and particularly when it comes to mental health, because it's a place that can overwhelm us with self comparison. Because and I'm speaking for me, because when I get into a bad place, I will, my Fred in my head will start doing that. Oh, look, you're not nearly as good. Look what they're doing. Look how happy they are. Look, they're in a relationship and you're not. I mean, all of those things start spiraling. So social media can be a scary place for people when you're not in a good place. And it is a thing to do a social cleanse, and it is a good thing to step away from it on an occasion. Um, I was booted off a few years ago. Still don't have any clue why. I made a post about child trafficking and I got kicked off. Go figure. But it was so good for me. It honestly, what I didn't miss it. I missed like some family stuff. I'm not gonna lie about that. But overall, I didn't miss it. And it's like, because it's fake. It is a fake world on social media. Because
Unless,
people are
no,
sharing with
I'm going to disagree on that one, because
this is
unless
the majority.
you're
People
connected
share
to,
their best, beautiful selves. They do not share their hardcore
unless
story.
you know them and you can read between the lines.
True story.
Yeah. I mean,
Otherwise, that's the self-comparison, is because people
right.
see like, oh, look at everything's so perfect and their family's perfect and their kids are perfect. And it's
Nobody's
like,
life's
no, they're not.
perfect. Nobody's life's perfect. And
No,
who would want perfect?
no, it's
You
boring.
know? So for us to compare ourselves to somebody else,
Mm.
I think Ben posted on Facebook one of his signs. Maybe it was just one of the guys over in We Fight Monsters. But if you threw your problems on the floor, or your troubles, and everybody did, would you pick up other people's, or would you pick up yours? I'd pick up mine. I don't want somebody else's troubles because I'm not walking in their shoes.
Right. You don't know where they came from. I mean,
No. And so this is where the judgment is. So when we feel that, people are judging us, I'm big about, understand that, one, you don't cater to your haters. And I've had a lot of haters in my lifetime, especially during the Brian Terry events. And that was really tough. And I will say that, knowing Jay and those group of guys during the first really helped me, because they had their own haters. And so I've gotten to the place that when I do, which I don't have that, I don't think I have any haters anymore, because I don't care. But back then, when I was still wanting everybody to find me worthy, because I was still trying to find my worth, bottom line is, when when they're judging you, it's because they're looking in their own mirror and they don't like what they see. So they're going to judge you.
yep.
They're going to sit there and try to break you down and knock you down. And we tend to allow them because we give everybody our power. And when we don't give our power, and we have those healthy boundaries, I mean, comes with family, people you work with. I mean, I talk to so many job seekers, especially executive assistants, they have toxic executives. And yet, if I leave, they won't know what to do. Yet they treat you like caca. Come on, seriously? We don't know. We don't know how to. We don't know how to walk away. We don't know how to get our power back. We don't realize that we are powerful people. We were created to be powerful people. However, society has told us we're not. Society has screwed us up. Bottom line. I mean, they're all lies. Only you know your truth.
Right. And how many times do we see people, and you know, you hear a story and you see someone from the outside and know their accomplishments, like what they've succeeded in. And then they share their story and you're like, "Oh my God, I had no idea." Of course you didn't, because you were making a judgment based on what you thought that person stood for, but you don't know what went on behind the scenes. And I can say that I do think from, you know, I've always been interested in other people, like what makes them tick, like just curious. I've always been a curious soul. Um, and understanding that, you know, which is sad that this doesn't happen in the world as often as it should anymore. But I'm like, I loved when, and I do love when people have a difference of opinion from me, because my opinion isn't the right opinion. My opinion is my opinion based on my experience, my beliefs that I've picked up along the way. But it doesn't mean I'm right. One, and two, it doesn't mean that I'm judging you for having a difference of opinion, because I'm always curious, like, oh wow, what made you lead to that?
And
And
you're
then
going to learn from them.
one
You're going to
hundred
totally learn
percent,
from them.
100%. Well, I can't read that. And hi, Leslie, too. Um, who I can't see the name here. Stephanie. Hi.
Stephanie.
Is it's just so interesting to me that people forget that, and then it's so in our face today in society. Is if you don't agree with me, then you're wrong and I'm right, and it's like, no, you're both right, because you've had a different experience. And I love that we learn from other people, and that's what we talk about a lot, is real talk, or with real people about real topics. We have learned so much. My opinions, and I don't even want to say necessarily my opinions, my beliefs, maybe pre-existing, have changed or have opened my eyes in a different way from hearing other people's stories who are boots on the ground to certain situations.
I want to go into what Stephanie had said about the boundaries, and I appreciate you sharing it, as well as Leslie and everybody else. You guys know me. I pull it in so we can all read it.
Yeah, definitely.
Here, Leslie, you know, she's trying to instill it to her daughter. I mean, that's so different from and nothing against our parents. It was just a different generation. But to understand that the boundaries, and as Leslie had said about comparing ourselves to each other, knowing that society wants you to be a certain way. However, as parents, and I'm not a parent, but I've seen, you know, how it works, that you have that control to say, here, you're an individual, you're loved. I mean, we're going to have Dan Roth on, and I mean, his twins, I can't wait until he comes on. But even all the people that we continue to come onto this show, we learn from them, for the fact that, as you said, when we talk to them, we see their, you know, LinkedIn, or we know them or whatever. We never know that deep story. And we've been blessed that when we have that one on, you know, when we talk to them beforehand and we just sort of say, this is how we roll. They sort of just, the vulnerability, I mean, just like, here I am. I don't want to do the same old speech that I do all the time about my book or my life, blah, blah, blah. They just pull it out there. And this is what, you know, I feel that we're so blessed, because we're allowing people to be safe, to just say, hey, this is who I am. This is my truth. I'm going to be transparent, and I'm going to be authentic.
Amen. So true. And now Leslie's saying, so why are we so hell-bent on being right? Here's what I mean, because again, I can only speak from my experience. Being in a domestic violence relationship, I was very emotionally abusive spouse. And I got to a place in that relationship where I wouldn't even, and I don't want to say argue, I wouldn't engage in the conflict, because he could tell me a purple wall was orange. And at a point of time, I would just agree, because it wasn't worth going down the path of being like, no, dude, it's not orange. because I would, at the end of that, would end up apologizing and being so ticked off and annoyed that it wasn't worth it, which is sad because my power had left the building. But after leaving that relationship and trying to redefine myself and figuring out who I was all over again, and giving it to God, because that is exactly what I did, is there were times when people would say things and I was hell bent on being right because I needed to prove that I was right in something because I had been proven and shut up for so many years and pushed to the side and had no voice, that I was overcompensating. But it was my own insecurity that I was overcompensating for. But in today's society, I think, to lean in a little bit more to maybe what you're saying, Leslie, is I think people they're being taught that because that's all over social media and it's all over all media, is, and you're being told, if you don't think this way, and they may not say this directly because they're using all sorts of language and things of how it's put out to us to make us believe, because when we hear something so many times, it does make us believe that that is the truth.
I call that propaganda.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm
yes,
sorry.
there's that. But people need to be right because they're told they need to be right. And if people don't agree with you, the other person is wrong and you're right. And that's a shame to me because my feeling truly is I can disagree with you, but I love to know why people, why do you think that way? Like, I find it interesting. I don't go like, wow, you're an idiot for thinking that um, right away. When people scream from the rooftop, though, on stuff that they're not educated on, then I do say you're an idiot. Because
Well, and I'm like you. When we feel that we have to be right, I've learned that the time, I don't want to say I get defensive, I get adamant. When you're telling me how my life
yes.
is,
Oh, yeah, I don't.
you can't tell me how my life is because you don't wear those
Yep.
shoes. You have not gone through a, you can tell me what you believe and then get to know me. I mean, I grew up, my father used to call me a burnt marshmallow. I was hard, crusty and hard on the outside, but I'm mush.
Mhm.
But because I had so many walls.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing even in this year, with having the people that we have had on, my walls are coming down. But I'm allowing myself to be safe, to continue to dance with my skeletons because Jesus died for my sins, to get out of my head, and to know that I have to, for me, be transparent of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're doing, and that's what our guests do. Because if we continue to stay behind the scenes and not talk about the struggles that we've had, other people's mental health is just going to go down. I mean, they're not going to understand that stigma does need to be broken.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with sharing. And you know what? Again, I'll go 10 years ago, and certainly beyond that, I would not have talked about domestic violence. I mean, I've done podcasts now on it and other things, because I wasn't ready to talk about it. I was still healing. I was still trying to figure out what to do with my own personal shame, humiliation, and forgiving of self, which is part of the process. So we're not saying that everyone should get behind a microphone and start sharing their story if you're not ready. But the other part is your story does make a difference. And Christy and I have heard this from some people. Oh, well, my story is not quite as big as some of the people you've had on. And it's like, yeah, it is. It 100% is.
Yeah.
Who, again, self-comparison. Just because your life hasn't been the same as theirs, or you've had a different job, does not mean that your story is any less important. Because I do believe everybody's story is important because everybody can relate. As many stories as Christy and I have heard, we relate to every single one of them. Doesn't mean that we've walked the same path by any means. But the reason that we relate to it is because there's a sense of compassion and empathy in all of it. And that's the relatability to it. And we feel for one another. And it does help motivate, inspire, and provide hope and faith and in understanding we're all walking on this journey to a destination. We're guiding each other there. Why do we spend so much time trying to prove that I'm better than you or you're worse than me or all of those, horrible things? What a waste, instead of just focusing on the most amazing things that we have right in front of us and the people that we have next to us. And to even go a step deeper, I lost one of my dearest friends just a little over 2 years ago. And Christy and I both had a lot of loss in our lives. I don't know one person that has sat and said, God, I wish I could go to work one more day, or that I could go be correct one more time. People aren't saying that. They want to go back to those moments where they felt something special with someone they loved. And it's like, man, why don't we think about that? The one thing we're all guaranteed in this life is death. But we're so focused on what we can achieve, how much more money can we get, how can I be better than this person, how can I screw over this person, because I don't care who I climb over to get to where I want to go, instead of being and moving so fast. Like, that's another thing. Take a minute and breathe and see what's around you, because we miss that. As much as I love technology, I mean, we're using it right now. But we're not on our phones right now.
Facebook and Instagram went down and YouTube went down today, but don't worry, people, it's all technology.
Yes, but being present and really taking in moments and just reminding yourself that and listening to someone else's story will change the course of your life in some way if you allow it to be present and take it in. Because I'm saying we're so incredibly blessed, because I can't think of an episode where we've gotten off of and I haven't said like, wow, there's a big takeaway, even if it's been recruiters. And I don't want to say even if, but if we're talking about job seeking and recruiting, it touches me the same way as when we have someone come on and share their story and cry, because it's emotional. Everybody's going through something on different levels. And it's just remembering that and being there for each other. And I don't know, stop the judgment, I guess, is my big thing. It's so sad. And we can do so much when we support one another. I'm not in competition with anybody. The only competition I have is the crap I have up here sometimes, which can be way too loud. And I don't know, maybe that's just the kind of wrap of all of this today, is about community and supporting each other. We felt that as soon as we said Justin couldn't be, we support Justin because he couldn't be here today. People reached out to us, support us because we didn't have our guest and offered to be here. The community and the chat has been here, providing to the conversation, and reminding Christy and I of how much we've changed over the course of almost a year of doing this show, because we have been present in these most incredible conversations with the most amazing human beings, every single one of them. And we can't thank all of them enough, because it is a blessing to us and it's a gift to us. And it is sometimes, it's not, it's total proof of when you give back to others, you do get back tenfold, because it has changed my life for the better, 100%.
I've learned that in my old years, though it's weird, it's, I will say, through everything I've gone through, I continue to feel that I'm younger. Because it's since my 40s, it was like a rebirth, that I'm finally, wakening up to who I was. And I catch myself, and it goes back to that mirror. When we see something that we want to judge, I always pause, like, why am I about to think this or say this about somebody? I don't know them, or if I know them, I don't know what they're going through. And even if I do know what they're going through, why would I put negative out there on a judgment that won't help myself or them? And to know that, it has to do with energy. We've got energy around us. So when we sit and complain and nag and just, oh, poor pitiful me. And yes, we're all poor pitiful us, because we do have times where just like, I can't do this anymore. But think of positives. I'm probably the only person that can literally say that my rape in my 40s was a positive because it changed my life for a positive.
Well,
And
that's part of what we say, just the awesome journey, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly. Because it is. The deepest, darkest places can take us to the most beautiful spaces. And I
absolutely,
think how you speak of it is so inspiring and beautiful, because I do think it helps people see things differently about themselves. Like, wow, if she can look at that as a gift, because it did lead you to your faith, to your rebirth.
yeah.
And mm, that's beautiful, sister.
So I want to mention next week we have a guest. However, he teaches. So next week the show is going to be at 2:00 Eastern time. We don't do this often,
We haven't
but
done it.
Robert Vera, I've been trying to track down for over a year for other things as well. He let's just put it this way: the tagline with Robert is he's the epidemic of hope, is what
Yeah, I
he's
love that so
about.
much.
And he happens to be he's an Arizona person, so he's connected to all Arizona people. But
Mhm.
with that, just to let people know that you might say, well, what happened to 111? Well, it's going to be at 2:00. There are certain people that sometimes we might have to tape in advance. It's a rarity. It's just that when we
We're having our first.
somebody saying, yeah, we need you, we need to have this conversation.
This
We
needs
need
to
to get it
happen.
on. But no,
100%.
we don't even talk this much ever anymore because we're both so busy.
It is not. I mean, truthfully,
But
um,
it's been an awesome year going into a year.
aw, see, I'm going to tear up already. Um, because I want to give everybody a little bit of a challenge as we circle, and I will end on the epidemic of hope, because I love that so much, and that needs to be on swag, big time. Is Because Chrissy was talking about judgment. We've been saying that a few times throughout. Is a few years ago, I'm not a New Year's resolution person. I'm someone who believes if you need to change something in your life, change it. Don't wait till a date. That's just an excuse. And they don't work. Like, how many people aren't going to the gym anymore? It's March. That promised they were going to start in January. In any event, I had heard this challenge, and it was, pay attention to how often you judge, and then sit in it. Like, why was I judging? Because we do judge because we see something in someone else that we don't like in ourselves. It's totally a reflection, or because it's hitting on some insecurity in ourselves. And one, it was all to be about, because you'll notice how often that we judge, because it's an easy pattern that we do. And I promise you, you will be shocked. And I think it was a Brene Brown thing. And I'm not necessarily, promote, not, but I think it was her who did this. And she even said, like, I was astonished at how often I did it. And it was a 30-day challenge, but it was to help you really be reflective of what's going on in me. Because sometimes looking at, like, what is ticking me on the outside that I'm not paying attention to, because we do sweep it under the rug, because that's part of the thing of growth. Totally a great challenge. You will be shocked. Um, but it will also help to be like, wow, I didn't realize I was feeling so insecure about certain things, or holy crap, I mean, you will be surprised. And then I do want to wrap on the whole epidemic of hope. What are you going to do to be part of the epidemic of hope? Like, that is something I could get behind. We don't need a vaccine for it. We don't need
We didn't need a vaccine to begin
anyone
with.
from the government to be involved in it. We can just do it. Oh, so I love that. I think, well, of course, we're going to be making posts about that now because he's going to be on next week. But I think we should continue that beyond, because I love that just in general, epidemic of hope. So, yeah. So final thoughts, my beautiful soul sister.
No, all's good here in Florida.
Mm,
It's all
Arizona
good.
too. So you guys, thank you so much, and for so many things, because this was so good. For like Christy just said, it gave us a chance to connect, and because it's done beautiful things for us. Two girls that were just connected on LinkedIn 15 years ago, just over this last year, because of true connections, walls falling down, and being able to trust one another with our true selves, which sometimes we don't like to do because it's hard. but it leads to the most incredible relationships and the beautiful places. So thanks everyone for supporting us today, being here and making it, we're coming up on our 1-year anniversary, which is so exciting. But until next week at 1:11 p.m. Eastern time.
Nope,
Oh,
nope,
2 p.m.
nope. It's
Sorry,
at 2 p.m.
redo it. I'll have to do this excerpt later. So I can use it for Rick's promo. So until 2 p.m. Eastern time next week, remember, we are all on this journey together. And together, we really do make it awesome. Have a great day, everyone.